So thank you all so much for being here to have this discussion on women's safety in the music industry. My name is Allison M. I'm the founder and owner of Wisconsin Music Ventures, and I'm really grateful to be joined here today. First by Maggie, who is a member musician with us. She's going to help do some of the questions with me, and then the four amazing panelists that have joined us here today, who I'm going to let introduce themselves right now. So let's start off with Melissa. Go ahead, and if you could just give us like a 30-second spiel on who you are and what you do in music.
Hi, my name is Melissa Garcia. I'm a partner at Collective Entertainment. We are a talent management firm that operates both in music and sports. I've been in the industry for over a decade, and I'm really, looking forward to being on this panel and speaking on the behalf of my experience as well as my business partner's experience, which I believe is why we may have come together today. And her name was Emily White.
Thank you, Melissa. And yes, Emily White's story, which if you follow her on Instagram, is a big reason why a lot of this has started, because that is a story that put her in a lot of danger, that happened here in Milwaukee, and a lot of us in this Zoom room right now were affected by that in one way, shape, or form. And speaking of which, Kanita, hi, let's hear from you.
Hey everybody, I am Kenita Hickman, owner of Katera and creator and executive producer for Artist Eats, which is a travel series where I interview independent musicians at a local restaurant. So I think my contribution to the music scene ranges brand campaigns, marketing. Ultimately, these days, I'm trying to help artists make money and be visible and connect them to other opportunities to do so. So that's pretty much what I do.
Thank you, Kanita. And then Carolyn.
Hi, everyone. I'm Carolyn Ortiz. I run with my partner, Leroy Big Ass Kids, which is a newly founded record label. We are an imprint under ADA and Warner Music. We are also a creative agency that supports emerging music artists, established music artists, always finding ways to help them make money, like Kanita said, in this economy. It's very important. But yeah, we support emerging music artists the best that we can.
Thank you, Carolyn. Great to see you here. And then last but not least, Cynthia.
I've been a musician. I've been supporting myself since I finished college. It's some decades now, and I've been touring internationally. I mostly do concerts and festivals. I've also, become sort of an avid educator on the side. And I am a jazz musician. I'm a jazz banjo player, which some people don't know how to put those together, but I've actually been doing some programs about that. And the banjo has a big history of obviously deep racism, misogyny, and all kinds of things, which sort of reflect my professional experience. And I was stalked for many years, and I have some practical experience and advice to offer for anyone who may need some help.
Thank you, Cynthia. We're going to start with the first question of being a female in the music industry. Have there been more advantages or disadvantages in your career? And we'll start with Kanita.
I would say definitely disadvantages for sure as a woman, especially as a Black woman doing music in Milwaukee. Yeah, I mean, I remember there was one act that I was working with, and their friends and other like music managers at that time when I first started out, so like 23, 24, these men would tell my clients that like there was no way I was coming up with these ideas, that I was the front person for some ugly guy, and these were really his ideas, but he was maybe an introvert or unattractive, so they put me at the forefront to kind of be the face. It it was ridiculous. I can't count how many times one of my artists would come back and tell me that some other artists didn't want to work with us because they thought I was the B word. But really, I just wasn't an idiot. Like, so I understand the difference between sponsorship and just wanting my artist to wear your t-shirt on stage. So like, you can't play me and you can't play my artist, right? But oftentimes just even advocating for yourself, there would be this label attached to you that I was aggressive, that I was the B word, and it was really challenging to create space for myself in music management and artist development in Milwaukee. Now, what I'll say is, because I know other people have to answer, is that we are now 15 years later, and I am the only one still doing music. I am the only one working full-time for myself. I'm the only one who was able to work at the director level, supporting independent creatives here in Milwaukee. And so you got to endure some shit. And if it's really what you want, like for me, this is what I wanted. But nah, definitely a disadvantage. Milwaukee's music scene on a larger level, right? Your Summerfest, your festivals, things like that, is old white men. But locally, at the really hyper independent level, it's younger men, white and Black men, and it's not a friendly place for women or for Black women.
Thank you for sharing that. Your endurance is evident. Let's hear from Carolyn.
I would say it's been more of a disadvantage for sure, for several reasons. One, men speak louder than women do. I think that's always been my experience, especially when I worked at Universal Music and I'd be sitting in a boardroom. My voice is naturally pretty low. So then when I try and raise my voice, right, oh, she's getting a little aggressive, right? No, I just want you to hear what I'm saying, right? Also, I've been invited to meetings or I've been invited to shows just to find out that the man wanted to take me out on a date, right? And it was this is not actually a business meeting. There was another agenda, and that's happened more times than I've cared for. So yeah, I would say for sure it's more of a disadvantage. You're always looked up and down when you walk into a room. You're always checked out first before you're addressed as a professional. And it's just kind of one of the things you have to expect as a woman. And you have to learn how to hold yourself and kind of let things roll off your shoulder. Otherwise, you'll get upset on a daily basis.
Thank you, Carolyn. Let's hear from Cynthia.
For a couple of decades, I was one of the only women in my field, which is early jazz. And there were some advantages, which was if I was on tour with a collective of musicians, I would get the most press. But of course, that made all the guys pissed at me. So that was, there were two sides to it. I understand in my head that being unusual is a marketing advantage, but the reality, the day-to-day reality, I suppose, is not that different than what these other women have mentioned. I have found that things have changed dramatically over time to better, but also I'm older now, so I am less subjected to the kind of sexual tension. I would say that there was a lot of inhibition on my part to, what Carolyn was mentioning. If I was trying to follow a lead or my agent was, I would rather avoid it than find out if it was actually, they're just interested, in me. Like my way was, I didn't know how to manage things like that. So now I have the advantage of age, just being less interested. Men are less interested in me now, but, and I think as an older woman, the advantages have increased and the disadvantages have decreased. But of course, the realities have, the primal realities that you guys have already mentioned have, still exist very clearly.
Thank you, Cynthia. It is reassuring to know that the advantages begin to grow with age. However, the reasoning behind it is very unfortunate. Let's hear from Melissa.
So I certainly have had very similar experiences to what these other women have mentioned. I can't tell you how many times I show up with a client who's a male and they automatically think I'm his girlfriend or I'm his wife or I'm a groupie, and being taken not seriously at first because of those initial impressions. I've had to elicit some kind of way to communicate where it shows that I am serious. So while there are these disadvantages, I try to look at these disadvantages as opportunities for an advantage, because people don't, they may not take me as seriously. So I have to further prove myself in the field. Or for instance, there was one night that a security guard was screaming in my face. He was a bigger man, right in my face. And I had to really tap into being calm, being the calm one. When you're getting yelled at for whatever reason, even if it's not your fault. So knowing that these are disadvantages that we commonly see, I really try to use that as a way to empower myself to turn it into an advantage. If I'm the only woman in the conference room, I make sure that I lean in and that I can speak and I'm confident and that I can show these other men that I am right there with you, that I'm working hard. And so really taking what our advantages and turning them into a superpower is I think part of the reason why we're all here, right? Is to try to understand and make these opportunities as opposed to things that continue to be disadvantages for ourselves and future generations within the industry.
Yeah, very well said. Thank you all. Then the next question is kind of something that we were discussing just before we went live with everyone else here. So Cynthia and Carolyn, this is, I think, where we get into the nitty gritty here. What are some of the scariest things that you've encountered due to your gender in music, and how have you been able to handle that? And let's start this time with Carolyn.
Some of the scariest moments that I've had, I have been assaulted. I have gotten punched in the face by a man at a nightclub. I have gotten harassed. I've gotten spoken about. I have, it's kind of like, what can you envision? And then it probably happened. And I'm sorry, what was the second half of the question?
And how have you been able to handle that, work through it? What have you done moving forward?
I think when you go through most of my experiences was when I was a bit younger. I'm older now. And there is a level of naivety that I had that now as I'm older, I realized, right, there are situations I could have avoided. And that's part of my messaging as I move forward is how do we create a safe environment for women? How do we teach young women, music artists, executives, interns, how to stay safe? I think the responsibility there is in the person who's doing the hiring. I think that's a conversation that's not had ever. I've never had a woman say to me, this is what you need to look out for. This is what you need to avoid. Don't put yourself in this situation. Look out for this person. Look out for this group. I've never had that. I've never had that level of mentorship. And I would love to see that in the music industry now. I'd love to see a safe space for women to be able to share their experiences without getting blackballed, because that happens a lot. I've been excluded from conversations. I've been excluded from opportunities working with artists and artist teams. And that's just not fair, right? So I think moving forward for me, the way that I handle things is to check in with myself always if I don't feel safe. I've done therapy to get over the situations that have happened, which I highly recommend for anyone who's been a victim of assault. Um, and I am just honest. I'm honest with the women that I hire. I'm honest with my friends. I'm honest with my associates. And I push this conversation forward every opportunity that I can, because it is our responsibility to create a safe environment for the generations that come up underneath us. Like Cynthia said, I am a bit older now, so I know better, and I want to share what I've learned with the younger generation coming up. My daughter wants to be a music artist, and I will be damned if she goes through what I went through, and I don't do everything that I can to keep her safe.
Thank you so much, Carolyn. Yeah, it's hard to hear, but these are real stories. So thank you for sharing that, Cynthia.
That's so heartbreaking that I need you to repeat the question, please.
What are some of the scariest things that you've encountered due to your gender in music?
Okay, well, I mean, certainly the scariest thing was, I mean, there are lot of small and micro aggressions that we all know just because we are women. And there's no woman on this planet who hasn't experienced various whatever. But I was stalked for 8 years, and it was an active FBI case for 6 years. And that was the scariest. So,
How did you, if you don't mind sharing, like how did you overcome that? How did you get
well,
that to the point of FBI involvement?
the there were no laws when this happened, and what finished it was when the federal anti-stalking. I'm sorry, this is upsetting me. Excuse me. I'll be back because I'm determined to offer my 2 cents.
Absolutely. We can come back to you. Yeah. Melissa, would you like to offer your experience on this same question?
Sure. I actually got full permission for my business partner to share it. She unfortunately couldn't make it to this panel because she had a prior engagement. So I told her I was more than willing to step in for her. And so recently, she dealt with a stalker situation similar to what Cynthia had dealt with. Not to the extent or the length of it, because there are laws in place that are there to protect women now, but it was a gentleman who was showing up to these various events that Emily was putting on publicly. And this is really her first time having to have dealt with such a public situation, because she has been at the forefront in a lot of ways within the music industry. But this time, she's out there hosting events and things like that. And so this gentleman, started showing up, started being inappropriate. He also started following her colleagues and her friends. I was told to block him, so I did. Um, and she made sure that she had evidence. And I think that's one of the things that we need to really be conscientious of now as we're trying to educate other people in similar situations. Make sure you have that evidence. Make sure you're taking the screenshots. Make sure that you are speaking to other individuals so that there are witnesses. And so throughout the process, Emily was very conscientious of that, of making sure that there were witnesses involving law enforcement when it was needed. And fortunately, she was able to get a 10-year restraining order. But it was a situation that I'm sure a lot of people can empathize with. That affects her. It still affects her to this day. It's still something that's very fresh and new that she is still processing. But her story is one of several stories like that, which is really unfortunate for a lot of us. I will say this though, that and I can't speak to what it was like 20 years before, I feel that we are so fortunate to live in an environment where we can have evidence, where we can have witnesses, that there can be a digital log, a digital footprint for these kinds of situations. And the conversation in and of itself has been changing, where we are starting to openly talk about it some more, and also including men in that conversation, which we cannot fix this unless we also get men to participate. And so when Emily was relaying the story to me, I found a lot of comfort knowing that there were law enforcement that believed her. They didn't gaslight her. They didn't question her. They didn't make her feel like she should be victim blamed. So hopefully that continues to change as we continue to have these dialogues and find solutions to these, inherent issues.
Very well said. Thank you again, Melissa. And yes, so grateful for the men that are around us, that are good men and that support us and that are allies for us. Absolutely. Cynthia, would you like to return? Okay.
I'm ready.
right.
Thank you, Melissa. You actually helped me. Just to lean in a little further about what you were saying about collecting evidence. One of the things that I learned was it is really, really important to note every single incident, because this becomes your evidence file. And, when this happened to me, there were no laws in place, and it did end sort of, I say sort of because I never received any justice for what I went through. But you need to keep a running tab, just like you've seen on detective stories on TV. Every time there's anything untoward, you need to write it down. You need to name, have the date, the time, the circumstances, and this becomes extremely important as evidence that you put up in court. Also, I think that there is fogginess about what is actually considered criminal behavior. And sometimes we're so used to being mistreated or overlooked or harassed or inappropriately spoken to or whatever. There's laws out there now, and you can familiarize yourself with them. They're all online. You can educate yourself. And if anything is even foggy, there again, you start writing it down and keeping track of everything. If anyone has, some of us, I'd say a lot of us know somebody somewhere who's a lawyer, or has some kind of legal connection. I used friends. Unless some lawyer is a real asshole, almost anyone will happily write you a cease and desist letter, or there are legal steps. I mean, I think that it's hard to think about the fact that you are in a potential legal situation and you need to actually build a case. And the other side of that experience is that it is amazingly empowering when you are feeling victimized to be building a case. You feel like you're doing something, and you are. It's you're gonna stop it by doing this, but the psychological impact of doing this can't be understated. It's deeply, deeply helpful to feel like you are not just a victim, but you are taking charge and you are doing something. And I think, when it comes to harassment, when it comes to stalking, this is different from, I guess I don't know if it's different for online harassment and stalking. Non-engagement is important. I mean, it might sound obvious or it might sound simple, but it's neither obvious nor simple because it's offensive, and you obviously are entitled to stand up for yourself. But when something's a little off, you have to be careful. And non-engagement doesn't mean being passive. It means writing it down, keeping track, and say, I'm going to get you. Just you wait, so to yourself, because you have to be really careful about what can be used against you again in a legal situation. And I guess I dealt with it by learning these techniques, which took me a long time. I didn't even understand I was being stalked at first. The guy was such a, he was a fan, one of these people who's so out of it that you feel kind of sorry for them. And, I'm a nice person and I didn't want to be judgmental, but as one of my colleagues said, he dresses so bad that in some ways he's hip, like, cause, like that kind of thing. And I felt sorry for him. And I think women now are way more sophisticated about boundaries, but with the Me Too movement that happened, I was amazed. I think I'm this, savvy, world traveling jazz musician, band leader. I'm used to being in charge and doing this and that. I was amazed at how much I learned about things that I didn't understand boundary wise were, from that movement that helped me really kind of shift my perspective. And I know that I had discussions with my friends who felt the same. It's like, gee, I never even thought about how inappropriate this was or how inappropriate that was. And I imagine that most of you are brought up in a different world, with better boundaries than how I was brought up in place. But of course, we all have a lot to go. And when it comes to actual violence that some of you have experienced, my God, that's horrific to me. Mine was always a threat, but I managed to survive.
Yeah, thank you for that, Cynthia. I know that's really hard to talk about. I see Carolyn looks like she wants to respond to something, so I'll go to her and then I'll go to Candida.
I do want to say that I think for the women that aren't artists or the women that are very young that work in the label or aren't young and work at a label or in a building or work with artists on their teams. My cat wants to join the Zoom. There are situations like I've gotten invited many times to meetings at a nightclub. I've gotten invited many times to meetings at a strip club or a party or a listening session or a recording session. And it's very hard to identify boundaries in those situations. And, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. We live in this, we work in this environment where there's always drinking and there's smoking and there's drug use, and that's part of being a music artist and that's part of being in the music industry. And the blurred lines are so real, and that is where so much danger comes in. So I will say one of the best ways that you can protect yourself is to remain sober when you're not in company that is familial to you, right? People that you can really truly trust. Don't take that drink. Don't indulge. If you're by yourself, just because they seem really friendly or they seem really nice, or this is your boss offering you a glass of wine at the end of the day when it's 10 p.m. at night and you're in the office by yourself working on an album rollout, use your best judgment in that case, because the nature of the music industry really is still sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Again, I've worked at Universal Music. Our label is an imprint under Warner. I've dealt with Sony. I've been part of the big three. Be safe, make safe choices, because those boundaries are not evident. Those boundaries are not clear. It is part of the music industry. So just make safe choices. That's all.
Really good advice. Thank you so much. And Candida, a question about your scariest experiences and how you've handled.
At first I didn't think I really had anything to contribute to this conversation. I think from an artist management standpoint, I've always been pretty safe. So the artists that I've worked with, they walked me to my car after events. I never felt alone. I don't drink. I mean, 2 glasses of a fruit flavored Moscato gets me loopy. So I am definitely the person when I was doing events, I was drinking kitty cocktails all night. And I'll say my scariest encounters happened when I wasn't necessarily in a position of power, when I was working for somebody else in a media space. And it's interesting because there's spectrums, right? It's a spectrum. It could be something as simple as, you know, that record label rep coming into town and asking, what are you willing to do to get to the top? That is certainly a real conversation that I had with someone as an intern. And I was like, I'm sorry. And once I understood what he was saying, I just made sure I wasn't alone in a room with him. One of the media companies that I worked for, I was kissed. He was training me how to do something, and he came behind me, he kissed me on my neck. And I don't know why, but I told my mother, and she made sure it got back to the station that this had happened to her 17, 18-year-old child. And she was having none of it. And so that person did get suspended. But then I was told it was because I wore halter tops and low-rise jeans. To be clear, they were Old Navy jeans, okay? Actually, no, it wasn't Old Navy. It was Gap jeans. It was an Old Navy halter top. It was Gap. There's nothing sexy about Gap jeans. Like, oh my gosh. And it was Gap jeans from the outlet. Not that I'm making excuses, right? I'm simply saying that this idea that somehow I had engaged this behavior when this person was put in charge to help me master a skill set as part of my intern position. It was unwarranted. It was unwanted. At no point did I ever express interest in. It didn't even occur to me. He was there to train me on something. And thank God in that instance, he owned it. He didn't lie about it. He didn't say it didn't happen. He absolutely owned it. And I think that's why he was suspended, but he was allowed to come back into the workplace. And so I had to continue to see him. And I think for me, as I reflect on it now, no one tells women or young men like about boundaries. Like, these should have been conversations that I was having in middle school, in high school. And certainly people don't tell you about boundaries and the workplace, because there's just conversations that shouldn't be had. There are innuendos that shouldn't be had. There are work cultures where everybody knows, you know, that this person in a power position is a predator. I worked at another company and we had gone out of town, and we left with the team, but we came back, just he and I. And I remember we were in the airport, and he kept trying to make me take a drink. And I kept telling him I don't drink, and I'm at work. This is a work trip. And it made the bartender at this airport so uncomfortable that she said, "Sir, if she doesn't drink, like, don't force her to drink." And he said that it was a part of the work culture. And if I wasn't going to be down, then maybe I didn't fit in with the work culture. I was fired on the 89th day of my 90-day probation period. And I wound up running to the bathroom and hiding until our flight was called. And that was a mentor. That was somebody I absolutely trusted, who was also in the media industry. And so you don't really handle these things, right? And in a city like Milwaukee, where you see everybody all the time, these people are still out here, you know what I mean? And I still sometimes have to engage with these individuals. And so, with the exception of the media company where the guy was suspended, nothing is ever done about these things. There is no justice, so to speak. You just kind of learn who is not safe to be around.
Yeah, Thank you, Kanita. And Melissa, you have a response? Oh, you're on mute right now.
I wanted to say that first, it's unfortunate to hear these situations, these stories. They're so common, unfortunately, and that's the other part of it too. And whether it's, you know, with someone who's supposed to mentor you or someone who you're trying to network with, I do agree that women have to make sure that they're putting themselves in as safe of a position as possible. But I think the root of it is that the culture itself continues to exist regardless of how often women have stepped up and said things. And so if you look at it from a systemic issue, there is a culture that is unfortunately still existent within the music industry that allows this behavior to be okay. And it's of my opinion that in order for us to fix this so that women don't always have to be safe around men, we need men to be a part of this conversation and find who those allies are, educate them, because men will listen to men. They have a hard time listening to women. That's just the truth of the matter in a lot of instances. Not all instances, but a lot of instances. It's something that we commonly see. But you know, when we're talking about making sure we're dressing appropriately, making sure we're not going to be victim blamed. What were you wearing that night? Oh, it's because you were wearing a halter top. All of that, you know, frankly, it's unfair for women to have to behave a certain way in order to protect ourselves when we are being almost punished in a way for simply existing. That's what we're doing. We are existing, whether or not we're drinking or not. We should be able to drink if we want to drink. Why do I have to, you know, inhibit myself? Oh, because there's danger. Well, what can we do to rectify that danger?
Go ahead.
Yeah, that was very, very well said. Oh, Kanita, apologies, I didn't see a response there.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I agree with Melissa completely that the onus always seems to fall on women or the victim to protect themselves, which again, in most cases is often women or non-binary individuals. And I think that men have to be willing to listen, right? Because this is a perspective that you may not understand. And so you have to be willing to listen and let us tell you what we need to be safe so that you can educate your gender folk. Because it is egregious. And as an 18-year-old who was hearing that, it was like, well, first of all, it's summer and this building don't have air conditioning. Yeah, I got on a fucking halter top. It's hot in here. And so, but the idea that somehow, to Melissa's point, just being made this behavior okay and make it okay for boys to be boys and men to be men, that should not be a part of men culture, of boy culture. And we really do, people have to do the work to really unlearn that and understand, I think, how power plays a role in those instances. Yeah, I think that's all I had. Also, no, one more thing. I think we also have to figure out how do we navigate these conversations as an artist community, because I think in addition to having my own experiences, when I worked at this arts organization at the director level, we heard a lot of stories of harm by artists to fans of music. And so what is our role in that? How do we resolve that? When do we banish an artist from the community and say, no, right? And is there, and this is a question I've been asking for years, and I don't know if this is necessarily the platform for it, but I'm gonna lift it up because it's recorded. When is someone allowed to be back a part of the community? Or when is the behavior too egregious? You know what I mean? And I've been curious about who starts that conversation, because as much as we're talking about our own experiences here, there are fans of music who are engaging with artists and who are harmed in these same ways, women harmed in these same ways. And you know, over the past couple years, we've seen the stories on Instagram and things like that. And it's like, well, how does that get resolved so that that person feels comfortable going to music shows again? Right. And what becomes of the artist? Right. So
Sure. And we'll let the discussion amongst the panelists keep going for now because it's a really good one. And it's answering some of our other questions that we had anyway. So we'll do Carolyn and then Cynthia.
Kanita, this is an awesome question that I have been trying to figure out. And, you know, an artist, I don't know if I should call him out or not, but I'm going to leave it alone. Has a song called Pass Out. And it's about getting women drunk and then having sex with them. And it was a priority single for his major label. And it got tens of thousands, if not more, dollars in marketing money put behind it. It was played on the radio. He made so much money at syncs, sync placements, etc. And this is an artist that has a history, a very public history of abusing women with rape cases, and they still put it out. This is one of the top 3 record labels in the world, put this song out, and he is still touring. And how, you know, some people use the example of R. Kelly, and it's such great music, and and it's like Michael Jackson and Steven Tyler, and you can go on and on and on and on about artists that have very real convictions or allegations of sex. You know, the documentary, what's it called? I had it open. Look Away, Look Away is another one if you haven't seen it, but On the Record is an incredible documentary about Russell Simmons and those sex allegations. And he is still in this industry. When is the line drawn? When do you say enough is enough? You can't be in this industry anymore. We're not going to play your music. Are the record labels and the executives at the top, should they be held just as accountable for these situations because they continue to not put safeguards in place for the women that work in this industry, for artists, for fans, and they know that this is happening and they still participate in it and they still push this agenda forward with absolutely no accountability, no repercussions. Who gets held accountable? And as far as I'm concerned, it's as much as the label executives as it is the artist, because you know what you're doing. You're giving them millions of dollars to continue to do whatever it is that they want to do, knowing that they're raping and assaulting women, and you're allowing it to happen. So Kanita, I don't know, you know, the answer, but in my opinion, there is so much beautiful music in this world by beautiful artists that will never see the light of day because they're not a major artist at a label. And until label executives stop caring so much about money that they know they can make from an artist because this artist has made millions of dollars before, so it's just low-hanging fruit, versus saying, you can't be part of my label anymore, let me invest in someone else who isn't a rapist. I don't see that change happening, but I would love to see it. I would love to see label executives held accountable. I would love to see music managers held accountable when you know that your artist is a rapist and you continue to put them on tour. I would love to see artist teams held accountable when you decide to market a song about raping women. Yeah, I would love all of that. And I think that is one of the biggest ways that we can prevent this from continuing to move forward, is to hold real accountability standards in this industry and say enough is enough. And when we think about Drew Dixon, who is the main woman from the documentary about Russell Simmons, she was the A&R for the Method Man and Mary J. Blige song. She won a Grammy. She was a phenomenal A&R that got raped by Russell Simmons, and nothing was done about it. She got blackballed from this industry and to this day doesn't work in music. What? How many other beautiful songs would she have made Where is the re-entry point for victims of sexual assault? We all know that women leave this industry in droves because of assault and harassment, and there's no one saying, hey, you got assaulted, come work for me. I'll make sure that you come back into this industry. The college degree that you invested in, the years of work and internships that you put in are not at waste. I'll make sure that you're kept safe. That doesn't happen. There is a lack of accountability here, and it is just as problematic from the person doing the crime to the people that are continuing to push them forward.
Yeah, thank you for that passion. We need more of that. So thank you so much, Carolyn. Cynthia, you had your hand up.
I think I'm in a very different genre in terms of what's going on, which of course has everything to do with the fact that there's not big money at stake because jazz is considered, you know, very niche. And are you all in popular music, commercial music worlds? I mean, are jazz musicians just, I mean, the old 50s thing of everybody being stoned and drunk and all that that's so over. Everybody's kind of talks recipes now, you know. I feel like I'm in a different world than what you guys have to deal with professionally. And even when I was younger, I had many experiences that you guys are reminding me of, you know, but I don't know. I don't know if it matches up to what you describe as a contemporary norm in your industries. I guess now we're only starting with like the people who run TV stations and the people who, you know, are, you know, creating movies and so on, and it hasn't infiltrated, and politicians, well, some of them, and hasn't really infiltrated to real life. And I don't know. I'm not articulating what I want to say too well, but I'm guess one thing I want to contribute is that one of the main things I learned from my experiences was how this was a norm. It was not unusual. My situation went on for a long time, but almost everywhere I spoke, almost everything I did, I learned that it was common. That was the big surprise. And I guess, I don't know, Carolyn, you're awesome. You should, I hope, I hope you can be heard. So
I don't plan on being quiet anytime soon. Thank you.
Yeah, glad you're all here to speak on this. I know we're going to want to wrap up pretty close to the hour mark, but you know, we have one more question that we want to ask for sure, and then whoever can stick around, we'll open it up for questions from those who are here, and maybe if you have questions that you want to drop in the chat for the panelists, maybe the panelists can answer in the chat. So Maggie, go ahead and take it away for the last question here.
Yeah, so building off of the previous question, given there aren't safeguards put in place in this music industry, what do you each do personally to keep yourselves safe, whether it be on social media or out and about as a public figure? So we're going to start with Cynthia on this, and we asked just for about 2 minutes or less, just to be conscientious of this time.
I did a concert recently at Lincoln Center that was live streamed, and I was surprised to find that scary. It was an honor that they chose my concert, my band. And I'm a big believer in therapy. I'm a big believer in just, I don't know, being aware. I think trauma is something that requires self-awareness, and it requires work. And I guess the way I keep myself now is I just try my very, very best to learn from the past and from listening to others around me.
Thank you, Cynthia. And Melissa?
I am very particular about the people that I surround myself with. I have done the work, as Cynthia had mentioned with therapy, but really understanding what my boundaries are and cultivating an environment around myself where I am around allies, around people who I can trust, that I can feel safe around. That does take time. It does take experience in order to cultivate that, but that starts now. And so I really make sure that I align myself with people who share my values, who will listen, who we can have discussions, deep discussions about these kinds of topics and try to move things forward. So, whether or not you're a musician or someone who's trying to make it into the industry, pay attention to people, pay attention to who you can trust, pay attention to the network that you're surrounding yourself with, and ensure that, you are making the choices to just cultivate that safety around yourself so that people are also attracted to you in your network. If you're cultivating safety for other women or other non-binary individuals, et cetera, you'll hopefully be able to find each other and create a tribe that stays strong.
Absolutely. And Kanita?
Well, I think the big thing is that I don't really work at night anymore. So I don't manage artists specifically. I'm usually working with a client who wants to engage with artists. So a lot of the work that I do now, I don't necessarily make public. So I think that's one part. I think the other part is I don't share my whole life on social media anymore. And so I'd always been somebody who didn't really allow people to tag me, in real time, or, if I was going to the gym, I would post the pictures when I got home. I would try to make them as nondescript as possible. So I think those are the types of things that I do. And it's mainly because I watch a lot of crime shows. And so lots of Law and Order. And I'm like, oh, I don't like that at all. So yeah, so I don't make myself publicly visible, but I will say I had a scary moment. I had gotten onto Bumble this summer. My therapist thought it was a good idea. I told him it was dumb as hell, but I did it anyways for 30 days. And it was indeed dumb as hell. So there was one person, no shade to Bumble. There was one person, I guess I took too long to respond back to him, and he Googled me. And that was really the first, and found my Instagram page. And that was the first time that I recognized I could be found through Google. That was a scary moment. And that's something that I'm still processing to figure out, how do I make myself less visible, right? Because when I do something like this, it'll be posted, you'll see my Instagram information, and I didn't want anybody with my Instagram information. And so I think monitoring somehow what's out there about you and being clear about what you want out there about yourself and your company too.
Fantastic advice. Yeah. Carolyn?
Personally, I don't, again, like Kenny said, I don't go out at night very much. I don't work with artists where I have to be in the studio with them or take meetings super late at night. And I work for myself, so I get to work from home. So my interactions are limited, which I prefer. Also, my business partner is also my life partner. So usually when I'm outside at nighttime, I'm with him, and he's a very well-respected music executive. So there are no boundaries being pushed when we're outside. So I use him for that, and I appreciate him very much for keeping me feeling safe and being safe. But for women that don't have that, or don't have the luxury of being at home, or can't avoid certain situations, my best advice is to just stay really vigilant. There are very few friends in this industry, real friends, that will keep you safe. So be aware of who you're around, be aware of who your circle is, and do what you have to do. Have a certain demeanor about you that might be a little less welcoming. When you're around a bunch of men or someone, if your spidey senses go up, pay attention to that, right? Remove yourself from that situation. And just stay vigilant, really, is my best advice.
Thanks, Carolyn. Kanita, follow up?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, have an accountability partner. When I'm going out at night, listen, I really like cheesy Fiesta potatoes and taco supremes from Taco Bell. It's just what I love. I love it after 10:30 at night. And I should feel free to be able to go and pursue that if that's what I want to do. And so I have, whether it's my mom or whether it's a homegirl, I check in with somebody. Hey, I'm going out to Taco Bell, or I'm going, if I'm going out somewhere by myself, right? I have somebody that I check in with to say, I'm leaving, I'm doing this, and I'll hit you as soon as I come back home. And I started doing that before the pandemic. You know, let's say I was working all day and I wanted to go to the gym at night. And then when you're going out with a group, being accountable to the group. I'll text you as soon as I get home. Please text me when you get home. So always just kind of having having somebody who's looking for you and who's expecting you to show up somewhere. I think is really important as well. And then that doesn't make you feel like you have to be confined to the house at night if you don't want to be, but somebody knows where you went and when you're supposed to be home.
Yeah, thank you, Kanita. And I know some of you have to get going, but for anyone who would like to stick around and discuss any of the things that we talked about here, or ask those who can stick around on the panel, any follow-up questions, go right ahead. I know Melissa had to jump off, but if you can stick around, glad to talk. I know Maggie and I can stick around a little bit to just debrief a little bit. And then tomorrow we will have a discussion in our all musician meetup, just kind of following up on this as well. And Nick O'Brien, who's here in the audience, will be leading that discussion. Hey, Nick. Any questions, comments from today?
I'd like to comment that I wish I was so perceptive and smart at your ages. Then I wish it didn't take me so long. You know, you guys are amazing and really impressive. And I wasn't really conscious of how I do use my partner to be safe. I go out when I feel like it. I live in New York City, but it's like it matters, you know, to me that I don't have to bother or be aware. It's like I can relax and just, you know, just do that. And also, I also, my partner, my husband is also my manager, and it's really disturbing how much more gravitas he has business-wise than women managers that I have worked with. And I think the business is changing that way. There are many more, at least in my field, than there used to be that used to be done. But still, he's an advantage. So anyway, but the safety thing is interesting. You guys are very impressive.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you so much for sharing your story. And, you know, Carolyn, I was going to ask you if you have a minute to just maybe mention your initiative that you're working on.
Yeah, so thank you, Allison. It's actually, I still need a really cool name if anyone has any ideas, but basically it's a movement to end sexual violence in the global music industry, you know, and I say global because as much as it's a problem here in the US, in many other countries, Latin America, K-pop market, there are even less safeguards available for artists and fans and music executives. So I would like to make sure that everyone is kept safe and protected. But my initiative is to raise awareness, although I've been doing so much research lately, and there is a lot of awareness, which is kind of scary to me a little bit, because executive people in the industry, they know that this is happening, right? Like this is not a secret. There are songs that come out constantly by female artists about, you know, assault and rape happening from their experiences in music. There's no lack of awareness. There's lack of action. And my priority here is to create that action, to create accountability standards for labels, for music tech companies, for any company in music. Have accountability standards, have safeguards, have a hotline, you know, an independent hotline that doesn't go to HR, that goes to someone that you know is going to really investigate a claim of sexual harassment or rape in the music industry. For artists, if an artist is getting raped by their manager, which happens unfortunately so many times, who are they going to call, right? Because this is your manager and they run your life. So you're either going to leave music or you're going to endure it in hopes to make enough money where then you can make your own choices, right? But there are no options here for someone to call and say, I need help. And that's really what I want. I want to be able to provide an opportunity for women to feel safe, like they have an ally, like they can call a phone number and get out of an unsafe situation, or say, hey, this person did this to me. I can't work here anymore. You need to remove me. And, you know, there's a fine line, there's the legalities around it, et cetera, et cetera. I'm sure that this is going to be an uphill battle, but I am persistent on seeing what we can create. Instead of just raising awareness, there needs to now be action taken. And that's my goal, is to create opportunities for action to be taken.
And how is one involved in your organization, your initiative?
I need all the help I can get, Cynthia. So if you would like to be involved, I can for sure put you to work, because I have a lot to do, starting with picking a name. So honestly,
I actually can help you with that particular thing.
I would appreciate it very much so.
Yes.
So I would love to chat. Allison, if anyone in your organization would like to be involved, has a story to share, a testimonial that we can use to continue raising even more awareness, I would be open to speaking to them. Really, anyone that wants to get involved. This is a very open opportunity for us to all get behind the movement to end sexual violence in music.
Mhm. Absolutely. I think there are some people here right now that will gladly get involved. So, yeah, absolutely. And then more who will see the recording for sure. So, you know what, in case, because the chat doesn't always translate to the recording, can you, what is the best way to get in touch with you?
My email is Carolyn@bigasskids.com. My Instagram is _Carolyn Ortiz _. Those are the two best ways. Allison, you are welcome to share my email with your group.
Okay.
I'm happy to chat with anyone.
Great. Thanks so much. Any other,
Thank you.
yeah, any other questions or comments here today?
I guess I want to add that I have both watched and participated in just one other panel. This is the only one of substance and actual hands-on information that I'm privileged to be a part of. So many platitudes and, oh yeah, we got to be strong, we got to own our power, all this kind of stuff. I mean, you guys actually dealt with the topic, and that was it was like annoying these other things, and that was wonderful to hear, and thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I appreciate that. And I think it's, you know, really because, I mean, many of us have recently experienced, unfortunately, some of the same person harassing multiple women. And,
In
you
your
know,
community, where you are, so you all know this is a circumstance that you all, oh, okay. Yeah, that's what
so.
you were referring to before, and I wasn't sure what you were talking about. Okay.
So that really was kind of the instigator behind a lot of this, but yeah, I mean, it's, and then talking with other people, other women about this topic, and putting the message out to women in music. You know, I got so many great responses about like either people like you and Carolyn who are like, here, let's talk about this. I have more information. I'm working on this initiative, or other people who are just like, yes, something more needs to be done. So that's why we decided to turn this discussion today into the topic at hand and really, ask questions. And yeah, yeah, it's not easy to talk about. And so thank you for.
Well, I cried everything, so that was normal for me. If I'm doing a song that touches me, it's like, oh no, I have to be careful.
Yes, but it's still a raw topic, and I
Yes,
appreciate
well, it always will be, but you learn from everything, even the worst awful things.
it.
So,
Absolutely, absolutely.
I have,
Carolyn,
yeah,
I want to express a very, very intense interest in helping your endeavor. However I can, I'll be reaching out with email, but I also have a question in terms of the professional sector. So I was interning at a production studio a while back, and it was about 6 months, and I ended it early because of extreme harassment that was escalating very rampantly, and I was fearful for my life. So how I had spent a few months debating whether or not I should continue in the industry. I was young enough to change direction. What do you recommend for young professionals that are really trying to embrace this pursuit, because it is intimidating as a young female, and there are so many ways to keep ourselves safe, but regardless, it feels like we'll be facing these things time and time again. And so mentally, spiritually, what do you recommend?
that's a hard question, especially with the recording studio aspect of it. Unfortunately, still, I think 95% of studio personnel, from engineers to producers, are male. Most of the studios you're going to find are male owned and operated, especially in locations like yours that aren't, New York or LA based or Miami based. So I would say find a female tribe, find a mentor in the industry that's a female that's doing what you want to do, and ask her to put you in touch with someone that can help you, that can guide you. I'm more than happy to do that. I know several, I'm not sure what exactly in the recording studio you were looking to do, but I do know female engineers and producers. I will be an ally to you and help you. I think it's just important to find someone that you can lean on, and don't let someone stop you. Don't ever let someone stop you. One foot in front of the other, one day at a time. Just keep moving forward.
Thank you. Thank you.
I second that. Well said.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Any last words here today?
No, I have to jump. Unfortunately, I have
Yep.
to head to a meeting, but thank you ladies so much.
Yeah.
Nick, it was nice to meet you. I am here for anyone that needs a mentor, that needs someone to talk to, that needs advice. And please reach out to me, share my information with your network. I'm looking forward to hearing from you.
Okay. Thank you so much. And I'll share the recording as soon as we have that uploaded. So
Thank
thanks
you.
everyone. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you, Allison. Bye.
Bye-bye.